So think about your day yesterday. Just mentally walk through it.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's dangerous.
Right, but really do it. You probably checked your email, what, 70 times?
Actually, the average is like 74 times, which is just insane.
74 times, and you probably switched computer windows, I don't know, nearly 400 times.
Yeah, you basically ran a mental marathon before lunch.
Exactly. You're firing off messages, you've got a coffee in one hand, you're jumping between video calls.
Like a dozen tabs open at once.
Oh, always a dozen tabs. You were just in perpetual motion from the second your alarm went off.
Totally.
But then, you finally closed your laptop at the end of the day, and you probably just stared at the blank screen and realized you felt completely empty.
That is the worst feeling.
It is. You have this sinking realization that despite moving at like 100 miles an hour all day, you accomplished absolutely nothing of actual substance.
Yeah, that hollow sensation at the end of a chaotic day is, I'd say it's basically the defining symptom of the modern knowledge worker.
It really is.
We feel totally drained, like our cognitive reserves are just entirely depleted. But we literally can't point to a single meaningful milestone we crossed.
It's a uniquely frustrating kind of exhaustion. Like if someone were to ask you right now, hey, what did you actually get done today?
You just stare at them.
You would. You'd be completely incapable of giving a concrete answer. And if you're listening to this and mentally reviewing your own week right now,
Feeling that familiar knot in your stomach.
yeah, you're definitely not alone. And that specific paradox is exactly why we're doing this today.
That's such a crucial topic.
It is. We are diving into a brilliant analytical piece titled Busy versus Productive, The Truth About Work-Life Balance.
Highly recommend reading it, by the way.
Definitely. Our mission for this deep dive is to really deconstruct the mechanics behind that empty feeling.
We need to figure out the neurology of our exhaustion.
Right. And uncover how we're just silently sabotaging our own progress.
And I think the overarching theme of our source material here is actually deeply validating.
How so?
Well, it identifies this not as a personal failing, It's a systemic behavioral loop that we are all trapped in.
Oh, that's a relief.
Right. If you feel that 5 p.m. burnout but don't have that sense of achievement, it's not like you lack a good work ethic.
Or that you're just inherently flawed.
Exactly. The data suggests we're simply directing this immense amount of high-octane energy at the exact wrong targets.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the underlying assumption in our whole work culture is basically that effort equals output.
Always. Hustle culture.
Yeah. If we're putting in the hours, sweating it out, and ending the day exhausted, we assume we must be succeeding.
Though we aren't.
Right. So where is the mechanical breakdown between the sheer volume of effort we're putting in and the total lack of tangible results?
So the breakdown happens because we've fundamentally conflated two very different things.
Okay.
The research draws this incredibly rigid boundary between being busy and being productive.
We do use those interchangeably all the time.
All the time. But functionally, they are entirely separate operating systems. Busy just describes a state of high activity.
Like replying to threads, organizing digital files, that kind of thing.
Yeah, attending status updates, exactly. It's just the act of being occupied.
Whereas productive is...
Productive actually requires generating forward momentum on tasks that carry significant weight and create real-world value.
I mean, it's like running on a treadmill versus running to an actual destination.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. You're sweating just as much on the treadmill, your heart rate is up, you're working hard, but you literally haven't gone anywhere.
You're in the exact same spot you started in.
Exactly. I also think about my laptop sometimes, like when a background application just completely crashes.
Oh yeah, and the fan starts spinning incredibly loud.
Yes. The machine gets physically hot to the touch and the battery just drains in like 30 minutes.
It's working so hard.
The computer is undeniably doing a massive amount of work. It is incredibly busy. But the screen is just frozen on that little spinning beach ball.
It's not actually processing anything.
So it's not saving my document. It's not editing my video. It is consuming maximum resources to produce zero output.
And that is a highly accurate representation of what is happening in our own brains.
We're just spinning our internal fans at maximum speed.
We really are. We've been conditioned by our corporate environments to believe that if we're actively consuming resources, like if we have that green dot on our chat app.
Oh, the green dot of visibility.
Yeah, if we're rapidly responding to pings, we assume we are functioning correctly. We mistake the heat and the noise of that spinning fan for actual progress.
But I mean, if we intuitively know deep down that we are just a frozen screen with a spinning beach ball, why do we keep doing it?
It's a great question.
Like, the exhaustion is very real, the burnout is real. Why do we willingly choose to sit in that state of high stress, zero output busyness day after day?
Well, the psychology behind this is fascinating, and it points to a very uncomfortable truth about human nature.
Oh, I'm ready.
The research indicates that we frequently use busyness as a subconscious defense mechanism.
Wait, really? A defense mechanism?
Yeah, we will literally deliberately manufacture 8 to 10 hours of frantic, low-level activity, specifically to avoid facing the one single task that actually matters.
Oh, wow. So we use the noise to drown out the work.
We do, because the work that truly drives progress is inherently intimidating.
It's hard.
It's really hard. It usually requires complex problem-solving, deep analytical thought, or like creative synthesis.
And it carries the risk of failure,
Right,
right?
exactly. Facing a blank screen to write a massive, complex strategy document requires an enormous amount of cognitive activation energy.
It's so daunting.
And your amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear and threats, often perceives that complex, ambiguous task as an actual stressor.
So the brain sees the massive strategy document, feels a spike of stress, and immediately looks for an escape hatch.
Spot on. And that escape hatch is an inbox full of unread emails.
Because replying to a colleague asking about lunch logistics takes zero cognitive effort.
It is entirely safe.
Safe, and I'm guessing chemically rewarding too.
Oh, highly rewarding.
Yeah.
Every single time you fire off that minor email or every time you close a redundant browser tab, your brain gets a little microdose of dopamine.
You checked a box.
You resolved a minor tension.
Mm.
You get this fleeting sense of accomplishment. And we just string together dozens of these low-stakes, high-dopamine activities to fill our 8-hour workday to the absolute brim.
Which provides us with a built-in psychological alibi.
Exactly. When 5 p.m. rolls around and the complex strategy document is still completely blank, we can look at our exhausted bodies and say, well, I couldn't possibly have started the big project today. Look how overwhelmed and busy I was.
That is, wow, we are literally weaponizing our own administrative tasks against our actual goals.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
We build this fortress of meetings and messages just to hide from the vulnerability of doing hard things. That shifts the blame from I don't have enough time to I am actively managing my time to avoid doing the hard work.
It's a radical reframing of how we view our schedules. But the good news is, the analysis doesn't just leave us with that heavy diagnosis.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, it offers a very sharp metric to cut through this whole psychological fog.
Which is what?
Well, it requires abandoning the metric of exhaustion.
Okay, so stop measuring the day by how tired I am.
Right. And instead, adopt a single clarifying question at the end of every day. And that question is, what did I actually move forward today?
What did I actually move forward today? I
So-
love that. If you are listening to this right now, maybe you're on your commute or you're making dinner, try applying that to the day you literally just had.
Strip away the fluff.
Yeah, strip away the emails you sent that didn't really need to be sent. Strip away the meetings where you were essentially just a spectator on mute.
Did a project cross a milestone?
Did a complex problem actually get solved? Did you move the needle? Or did you just generate a lot of heat and noise?
Because asking that question consistently forces a confrontation with your own habits.
You can't hide from it.
Nope. Once you recognize that you are substituting activity for progress, you naturally start trying to prioritize the meaningful, difficult tasks.
So you sit down at your desk with the best of intentions.
I do. You tell yourself, today is the day I tackle the strategy document.
I know that exact feeling. You sit down, crack your knuckles, open the blank document, and then a tiny notification slides into the corner of your screen.
It's inevitable.
Or your phone lights up with a message. You glance at it for 3 seconds, and suddenly your entire morning is just derailed.
Gone.
We want to do the hard work, but we are magnetically pulled away from it. It feels like this epidemic of weak willpower. We blame ourselves for not having the discipline to just stare at the screen and think.
But blaming willpower is a complete misunderstanding of how the human brain processes information.
Wait, it's not a discipline problem.
Not at all. The underlying cause of this constant derailment is not a lack of moral fiber. It's the sheer volume of environmental distraction we tolerate.
Okay, interesting.
And what's fascinating here is the neurological mechanics of how distraction destroys productivity. They are really severe. The research highlights this phenomenon called attention residue.
Attention residue. Okay, what exactly is happening in the brain when we experience that?
So we generally treat human attention like a simple mechanical switch.
Like flipping a light on and off.
Right. We assume we can flip it to a Slack message, read the message, and instantly flip it back to our complex strategy document with zero loss of momentum.
But let me guess, human cognition does not work that way.
It absolutely does not.
Yay.
When you are engaged in deep, complex thought, your brain is holding a massive amount of context in its working memory.
Like mental RAM.
Exactly. It's loading all the relevant variables into your RAM.
So you're holding the entire architecture of the document in your head. You know what the last paragraph means, you know where the argument is going, you have the tone locked in.
Yes. Now, when a notification pulls your eyes away, even for 10 seconds to read a text, your brain is forced to dump that complex context from your working memory to load the new context of the text message.
Oh no.
And when you look back at your complex document, that information is gone. You cannot simply pick up where you left off.
You have to start all over again.
You have to spend significant cognitive energy reloading all of those variables back into your working memory. And the residue of the previous task, like that text message, kind of lingers, clouding your focus.
So every single time I glance at a notification, I am essentially crashing my brain's operating system and forcing it to reboot.
Pretty much.
Well, no wonder it takes me 45 minutes to write 3 sentences sometimes.
And the reboot process requires an immense amount of glucose.
It burns physical energy.
Yes. The prefrontal cortex, which governs your executive function and deep focus, literally burns through physical energy every time it has to reorient itself.
Wow.
This is the physiological explanation for the exhaustion we discussed earlier.
So if you're interrupted every 6 minutes by a ping, an email, or a colleague tapping you on the shoulder,
Your brain is in a perpetual state of context switching. You're burning massive amounts of energy just trying to figure out what you were doing before the interruption.
But wait, let me push back on this a little.
Sure.
What if I'm an IT manager or like a client success lead? My literal job is to monitor communications.
Right. Highly reactive roles.
Yeah. If I turn off my messaging apps for an hour to do some quote-unquote deep thinking, servers could crash or a major client could escalate an issue. How does this framework account for roles that are inherently reactive? Because we can't all just vanish into a cabin in the woods to write code all day.
That is the most common and honestly most valid friction point when discussing deep focus. But the analysis makes a really crucial distinction here.
Okay.
It is absolutely true that many roles require reactivity. However, very few roles require absolutely instantaneous second-by-second reactivity for 8 unbroken hours.
We kind of inflate the urgency of our communications, don't we?
We massively inflate it. We convince ourselves that if we do not reply to an internal team message within 45 seconds, the company will collapse.
We literally manufacture our own state of emergency.
We do. And then we build physical environments that guarantee our focus will be shattered.
Like leaving the inbox open on a second monitor.
Exactly. Ensuring our peripheral vision is constantly assaulted by movement. We leave our phones face up on the desk.
Oh, the smartwatch vibrations.
Yes. We wear watches that physically vibrate against our skin every time someone tags us in a document. We are volunteering to have our working memory dumped every 3 minutes.
This is so true. Actually, if you're listening to this, just glance at your phone right now.
Do it.
You probably have half a dozen red badge notifications sitting there just waiting to pull your attention away. Or look at your browser tabs. You have curated an environment that is actively hostile to your own focus.
It's self-sabotage.
So the goal isn't to ignore your job responsibilities, right? The goal is to take back control of the environment.
Right. If you're an IT manager, maybe you check the queue intensely for 20 minutes, and then you close the window completely for 20 minutes to work on a larger infrastructure problem.
It's about intentional batching rather than a slow, continuous leak of attention.
Intentionality is the key.
Yeah.
But knowing that we need to protect our focus and actually doing it, well, those are 2 different challenges.
Oh, absolutely.
When your brain is neurochemically addicted to the constant novelty of distractions, trying to sit in silence and focus on a hard task can induce genuine anxiety.
Because your brain is craving the dopamine hit of the inbox refresh.
It's going through withdrawal, essentially.
It's visceral.
And
I know if I lock my phone in a drawer and try to just look at a complex spreadsheet, my skin literally starts to crawl after about 4 minutes.
the friction of trying to stay on task feels insurmountable.
So how do we override that biological resistance without just relying on superhuman willpower? Because we already established willpower doesn't work.
Well, the source material leans into a highly effective behavioral hack for this exact problem.
Okay, I need this hack.
It involves manipulating how the brain calculates effort. The methodology suggests starting with a strictly controlled, highly compressed block of time, specifically a 25-minute block.
25 minutes of absolute uncompromising focus.
Yes. For 25 minutes, you disable every single notification.
Phone in the other room.
Phone in the other room. You close every browser tab except the one you need. You commit to doing nothing but the single difficult task in front of you.
But why 25 minutes? What is the biological significance of that specific duration?
It is about bypassing the brain's threat detection system.
The amygdala again.
Exactly. When you look at a massive project and think, I need to work on this all afternoon, the brain calculates the cognitive load of 4 hours of deep work, flags it as an overwhelming energy drain, and immediately triggers the urge to escape to a distraction.
The mountain just looks too tall to climb.
It's like waking up and realizing you have to run a marathon. Your brain just says, no, we are staying in bed.
Yeah, but if you say it's just a short jog.
Precisely. When you tell yourself, I am only going to do this for 25 minutes, and then I am completely allowed to stop, the calculation changes entirely.
The brain looks at a 25-minute window and perceives it as a minor, manageable investment.
It significantly lowers the activation energy required to begin. It removes the dread.
It really reminds me of the mechanics of starting a cold engine. Like, the hardest part is just getting the initial turnover.
Getting the spark.
Yeah, once the engine catches, the momentum keeps it running. If I sit down and promise myself I only have to endure 25 minutes of discomfort, I can usually force myself to put my shoes on, so to speak.
And here's where it gets really interesting. What happens at minute 15?
Oh, 9 times out of 10, right around the 15-minute mark, the friction just vanishes.
The brain stops fighting.
Yes. I load the context into my working memory, the ideas start connecting, and when the 25-minute timer goes off, I actually don't want to stop. I'm in the flow state.
And that flow state, which neurologically is often referred to as transient hypofrontality, is where real value is created.
Transient hypofrontality? That sounds intense.
It just means your sense of time and self kind of drops away because you're so focused. And the remarkable thing about these small focus blocks is that they're not just a temporary trick.
They aren't.
No, they act as cognitive rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Because constant distraction physically weakens your ability to sustain attention. By forcing yourself into these 25-minute blocks, you are slowly rebuilding the neural pathways required for deep focus.
So you're basically lifting weights for your attention span.
You are increasing your cognitive stamina over time.
Okay, so I've locked my door, I've set my timer for 25 minutes, I have achieved perfect, uninterrupted focus, my brain is locked in.
Right.
And I've done this. Yesterday, I used that perfect diamond-sharp focus to spend 25 minutes perfectly color-coding my email folders and deleting old calendar invites.
Oh, no.
I was highly focused, but I was still completely useless. Focus is just a magnifier, right? If you point it at the wrong thing, you're just magnifying the busyness.
And that is the crucial pivot in the research. Having the capacity to focus is only half the battle.
You have to aim it correctly.
The target of your focus dictates your ultimate output. To solve this, the text introduces a severe dichotomy regarding the value of our daily tasks. It separates all professional activity into two distinct buckets: deep work and shallow work.
Okay, let's define the architecture of these two buckets, because I think a lot of us mix them together. What actually constitutes deep work?
Deep work consists of tasks that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit.
A heavy lifting.
Right. They require intense, distraction-free concentration. This is the work that cannot be easily replicated by an algorithm or handed off to an entry-level assistant.
It's the synthesis of new ideas, developing complex strategies, writing intricate code, doing deep analysis of a messy data set.
Deep work is the engine of value creation in the knowledge economy.
And the other bucket is the shallow work.
Shallow work encompasses the logistical, administrative, busy work that keeps the machinery of a job running, but does not actually create new value.
Like replying to routine emails.
Filling out expense reports, sitting in on informational meetings, formatting PowerPoint slides. It's work that you can easily do while slightly distracted.
The danger here seems so obvious once you separate them like that. If deep work is hard, cognitively draining, and scary, and shallow work is easy, low stakes, and rewarding,
Our brains are naturally going to gravitate entirely toward the shallow bucket.
it is the path of least neurological resistance.
It is. We can spend an entire 10-hour day gorging on shallow tasks. We clear out the inbox, we file the reports, we organize our digital workspace.
And we leave the office feeling a tremendous sense of accomplishment because we did 100 different things.
But the research warns that this is a catastrophic trap. You can spend an entire career being exceptionally efficient at shallow work, and you will never experience meaningful professional growth.
Because you never produced anything of unique value.
Ex-
Wait, but let's look at the reality of holding a job here. I can't just tell my accounting department, hey, sorry, I am a creature of deep work now. I will no longer be filing my expense reports.
They wouldn't love that.
No. The taxes have to be paid, the client emails literally have to be answered, the compliance training has to be completed.
Absolutely.
If we completely ignore the shallow bucket, the infrastructure of our professional lives will just collapse. How do we reconcile the necessity of shallow work with the value of deep work?
Well, the framework does not suggest that shallow work can or should be eradicated. The solution lies in the mathematics of how we allocate our time.
Right.
The data reveals a fascinating ratio. It suggests that just 1 to 2 hours of genuine, uninterrupted deep work can generate more lasting value and more forward momentum than an entire 40-hour week of fragmented, shallow effort.
Wait, 1 or 2 hours? That sounds impossibly low.
It sounds low until you realize how incredibly rare a full hour of unbroken deep cognition actually is in the modern workplace.
Most people never achieve it.
They don't. They might be at their desk for 8 hours, but they are constantly hovering in the shallow end, getting interrupted every few minutes.
Ah, I see.
If you can carve out and protect just 90 minutes a day for deep, complex thought, you will drastically outperform someone who is just busy for 10 hours.
So the goal isn't to pretend the shallow work doesn't exist. It's to quarantine it.
Quarantine is the perfect word.
You contain the shallow work so it doesn't bleed into your deep work blocks. You do your expenses at 4 p.m. when your brain is already tired, instead of doing them at 9 a.m. and burning your best cognitive energy on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. You relegate the shallow work to the margins of your day.
So, listener, think about your own to-do list for tomorrow. Mentally scan the items you have written down right now.
Give them a hard look.
Yeah, filter them through this specific lens. Which of those items are deep work? Which tasks require your unique intellect and will actually move your goals forward?
And which items are shallow work?
The maintenance, the administration, the noise. If you look at tomorrow's schedule and you cannot identify a single block of deep work, you are looking at a day designed for the treadmill.
You're planning to generate heat, but no movement.
Exactly.
And that proactive categorization is vital. Because if you do not consciously label the deep work and build a fortress around the time required to do it, the shallow work will naturally expand like a gas to fill every available minute of your day.
Let's trace the arc of what we've discovered so far, because this is a lot.
It's a big shift.
We understand the illusion of busyness. We know that distraction physically drains our cognitive battery via attention residue.
We have the tool of the 25-minute focus block to overcome the brain's resistance to starting.
And we know we must point those blocks at deep work while quarantining the shallow work.
Right.
But this introduces a completely new problem. Let's say I master this.
You become a deep work machine.
Right. I am highly productive. I am moving the needle every day. My output skyrockets. What happens when my ability to do deep work just consumes my entire existence? Ah, the balance question.
Yeah, the source material transitions heavily into the concept of work-life balance, but I feel like that phrase is so corrupted now. It just sounds like an HR poster in a break room.
The term has definitely been entirely stripped of its utility. We generally view work-life balance as a rigid mathematical equation.
Like a perfect 50-50 split.
Right. We imagine a scale with exactly 8 hours of work on one side and exactly 8 hours of personal life on the other. But the research fundamentally rejects this time-based accounting.
What does it propose instead?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it proposes that balance is not a measure of time allocation. It is a measure of energetic allocation.
Energetic allocation. So it's not about clocking out at precisely 5:00 p.m. every single day, no matter what.
No. That mathematical approach ignores the reality of human ambition and complex projects.
There will inherently be weeks where a massive product launch or a critical deadline demands intense, disproportionate energy. The pendulum swings heavily toward work. And a rigid mathematical balance would dictate that you just drop everything at 5 p.m., which actually causes immense anxiety.
Because the work isn't done.
Exactly. Energetic balance accepts that the pendulum swings. It acknowledges that sometimes work requires more bandwidth, and sometimes a personal crisis or a family vacation requires the pendulum to swing entirely the other way.
That is deeply liberating to hear. It removes the daily guilt of feeling like you are always failing at one side of the equation.
Balance is a macro view, not a micro measurement.
But the text does place a hard limit on this, doesn't it? The pendulum can't just stay pinned to the work side indefinitely.
It absolutely cannot. The biological mechanics of deep work dictate that high-level cognitive output requires high-level physiological rest.
The brain needs to recover.
The prefrontal cortex literally must have time to clear the metabolic waste that builds up during intense concentration.
Right.
If you maintain a high energetic output without deliberate high-quality recovery, the system will crash.
And that's burnout.
Yes. The analysis is unequivocal here. Burnout is not an emotional weakness.
That's so important to remember.
It is a physiological inevitability of a system pushed beyond its capacity to repair itself.
The research details a specific symptom of this impending burnout that I think we really need to highlight because our cultural definition of burnout is just, oh, I'm feeling very tired.
But the physiological reality is much stranger and much more alarming.
It describes a state where incredibly mundane, microscopic tasks suddenly feel like insurmountable physical burdens.
This is the hallmark of allostatic overload. That's when the chronic stress on your nervous system reaches a breaking point.
Allostatic overload.
Yeah. Your brain essentially engages in emergency brake to prevent further energy expenditure. This is why, in a state of burnout, writing a one-sentence reply to a simple email feels like trying to lift a car.
Or like deciding what to eat for dinner can induce a panic attack.
The cognitive friction we talked about earlier becomes your permanent baseline state.
I think anyone who has pushed themselves too hard recognizes that terrifying heaviness. You stare at a completely benign email and your brain just screams, I physically cannot do this.
It's your nervous system stepping in to save you from yourself.
So energetic balance, like true restorative disconnection, is the preventative medicine to keep that emergency brake from engaging.
Precisely. Disconnecting is not a luxury. It is a mechanical requirement for sustained productivity. You cannot be productive if your hardware is destroyed.
All right, so we have a profound philosophical understanding of this architecture now.
We covered a lot of ground.
We know the difference between heat and movement. We know how to manage cognitive load. We understand the necessity of recovery. But, philosophy doesn't survive contact with a messy Tuesday morning.
That's very true.
If I am sitting at my desk tomorrow at 8 a.m., knowing all of this, how do I actually execute it? What is the user manual?
Thankfully, the research provides a remarkably stripped-down operating system for the day.
I love a good system.
It's great, and the elegance of the system lies in its refusal to overcomplicate. It does not require complex tagging systems or color-coded calendars or specialized software that takes longer to manage than the work itself.
Oh, those are the worst.
Right. It is a three-step protocol designed to bypass decision fatigue entirely.
Let's break down the protocol. Step 1 happens the moment you sit down.
Step 1 occurs before you allow any external input into your system. Before you check your email, before you look at your company's messaging app, before you check the news.
You look at the landscape of your projects.
And you select a maximum of 3 crucial tasks, your top 3.
Why limit it to 3, though? My actual to-do list has 47 items on it. Picking 3 feels like I'm ignoring the reality of my job.
Because limiting it to 3 forces the prioritization of deep work.
Ah, right.
If you allow yourself to put 15 items on your daily list, your brain will naturally select the easiest 12 items to do first, and the 3 complex, deeply valuable tasks will be pushed to tomorrow.
Because we always choose the shallow work.
Always.
Yeah.
By artificially capping the list at 3, you are forced to make hard choices about what actually matters. You are identifying the tasks that require deep cognitive engagement.
I view this kind of like packing a suitcase.
Oh, I like that.
If you put the big rocks in first, your top 3 tasks, everything else, all the sand and shallow work, can kind of fit around them later. But if you fill the suitcase with sand first, the big rocks will never fit.
The shallow tasks will crowd out the deep work, exactly.
So, listener, if tomorrow started right now, what would your top 3 be? What are your big rocks?
It's a great exercise.
Okay, so I have my 3 tasks. What is step 2?
Step 2 is execution. During your prime cognitive hours, which is usually the first few hours of the workday, you deploy the tools we discussed earlier.
The 25-minute blocks.
You utilize your 25-minute focus blocks. You disable the notifications. You protect your working memory, and you ruthlessly attack those 3 tasks until they are complete.
You essentially build a fortress around those 3 tasks. You don't let the shallow work breach the walls until the deep work is secure.
And then step 3 closes the loop.
What's step 3?
Step 3 is the vital moment of reflection at the end of the day. As you are preparing to log off, you review the protocol. Did you complete the top 3?
You ask yourself that core question.
Did I make actual progress today, or was I just active?
This reflection period is so critical because it prevents the anxiety of the open loop.
It really does.
The reason we often can't sleep or can't enjoy our evenings is because our brain is still churning on the ambiguous mass of unfinished work.
It's just hanging there.
Yeah. But by setting a specific target of 3 things, hitting that target, and then acknowledging the hit, you are sending a signal to your nervous system that the work is complete. You have permission to power down the servers.
It creates a defined boundary between output and recovery, which, as we established, is totally necessary to prevent burnout.
It is such a clean, logical system. Put the deep work first, protect the focus, acknowledge the progress, and rest.
Simple but not easy.
Right, because trying to rewire years of bad habits is intimidating.
Which is why the source material concludes with a vital piece of pragmatic advice. Do not attempt to execute this perfectly on day 1.
Start small.
If you try to overhaul your entire professional life overnight, your brain will reject the massive change as a threat. The goal is small, consistent application.
So if you can manage just one 25-minute block of deep focus on a top 3 task tomorrow, that is a victory.
A huge victory. The neurological pathways of focus compound over time. Consistency rewires the brain.
So what does this all mean? Let's pull all of these threads together.
We've covered the whole architecture.
We have taken a massive journey through the neurology and psychology of modern work. Let's lock in the core paradigms we've uncovered. First, activity is not achievement. Do not mistake the spinning fan of busyness for the processing power of productivity.
Second, distraction is a physical drain on your energy. Protect your working memory from the constant context switching of notifications.
Third, hack your brain's threat detection system by starting with heavily protected 25-minute focus blocks.
Fourth, the value is in the deep end. 1 hour of complex, deep work will outpace 10 hours of logistical, shallow work.
Fifth, burnout is a physiological failure state, not an emotional one. True, energetic disconnection is required to maintain the machine.
And finally, bypass decision fatigue with the top 3 protocol. Select 3 vital tasks, execute them with deep focus, and close the loop at the end of the day.
It is a profound structural shift in how we interface with our professional obligations. But there is one final provocative implication of this research that we really must consider before we wrap up.
I'm ready. Where does this ultimately lead us?
Well, the expert here leaves us with a final thought to really mull over.
Building on everything we know about human nature now.
Right. If we accept the physiological reality that deck work is hard and shallow work is a chemically rewarding escape.
And if we accept that we actively curate environments filled with distraction to avoid the vulnerability of deep thought.
We have to hold a mirror up to our entire corporate culture.
We really do.
Yeah.
Is our societal obsession with being quote-unquote so incredibly busy, our constant need to perform exhaustion for our bosses, our peers, and our families, is all of it just a socially acceptable defense mechanism?
Wow. Are we collectively using busy as a shield to hide from the difficult, meaningful work that would actually require us to evolve?
Are you using busy as a shield?
That reframes everything. It demands that we look at our own schedules and ask if we are managing our time or if we are just managing our anxiety.
That is an incredibly powerful thought to carry with you.
It really is. Thank you for walking through this complex architecture with us. I hope this deep dive has given you a completely new lens through which to view your workday tomorrow.
Try the top 3 protocol. Protect your focus.
Stop rendering the background noise. We'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, step back from the noise and we'll talk to you next time.